Keiser is a retired, very successful stockbroker. He also helped invent what is used on many stock exchanges today. He invented the virtual trading Hollywood stock exchange system. And he's done shows with BBC, RT, Press TV, you name it, radio host, TV host. I was on his show that actually aired over the weekend. And that video is posted up at Infowars.com. At least I gave it to the guys to post this morning. I didn't see it in the top story, so I'm going to have it reposted up there. An important interview we did on several subjects. But Max joins us here today, and we're going to be talking to him in just a moment. I wanted to plug, if you go to Infowars.com, Founding Fathers Battle Gun Grabbers from the Grave, special report. Just an incredible video put together by Aaron Dykes and crew that needs to go out to everybody. This is powerful and is cyanide to the globalist lies. It is absolutely essential video. Founding Fathers Battle Gun Grabbers from the Grave, top featured video at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. You heard us air part of it last hour. Okay, going to Max Keiser of MAX-KEISER.com. He joins us from London. Max, so much is happening, and I wanted to get you on about the economy because, you know, they're buying urban assault vehicles, 1.6 billion bullets, training the Army for martial law. That's all declassified, gearing up like it's the end of the world. And you believe that by the end of April, we're going to see the next phase in implosion. We're already in an implosion. They just use more debt and welfare checks and you know, the government little credit cards to keep things going. It's a consolidation program. But now we've seen a bunch of countries, the biggest of which, Germany, the key to the EU, repatriating their gold, saying in the news, I saw it in the Financial Times, we don't trust the U.S. anymore. So even the crooks in running Germany don't trust the crooks over here. So are we seeing that creeping towards the exits that you've warned about? Then we'll get into the your take on the Second Amendment, what's coming up in the economy, this African invasion, where even mainstream news is saying terror in North Africa, our Westerners pulling the strings of Al-Queda. I mean, even mainstream news now goes, is NATO and the U.S. staging stuff to be able to invade? Duh. Look at Libya, look at Syria. Again, joining us, Max Keiser. Max, so much is happening. I hope that your bold prediction is not true, but unfortunately, it looks like we're creeping towards the eve of financial collapse. We'll talk about what that collapse will look like as well. Max Keiser.
Hey, Alex. Yeah, well, nice to be on again, and thanks for coming on my show. And I think you describe it well, creeping toward the exits. And this is what the German gold repatriation story is all about. And as you point out, the central banks have lost trust in each other, and they are taking their gold out of banks in respective vaults around the world, and they're bringing it all home. And they're doing this in a way that will precipitate and accelerate this collapse that we've been talking about. And to give you an idea for how this all works, in Britain, for example, the government says they have 300 tons of gold here in Britain. But my sources tell me that they have leased out or sold over 1,000 tons. So we have a fractional gold standard around the world that is keeping these central banks afloat. And now that they all want their gold back, they find out that the gold's not there. Back when Germany took 900 tons from Britain back during the 2000-2001 period, Gordon Brown, to satisfy Germany's demand for gold to be sent back to Germany at that time, he ended up having to sell 400 tons of Britain's gold. So Britain had to sell 400 tons, and that's about well over $1 trillion now that he gave away, because the price of gold at that time was $250 an ounce. Now it's $1,700 an ounce. And this is a problem going forward. The Netherlands want their gold, Germany wants their gold, China is buying gold. But these central banks that say that they have gold, it's turned out that they actually leased the gold, which is a way for them to put on their books that they still own the gold. When the Fort Knox, for example, when they lease the gold, they claim that is as good as owning the gold itself. But if you were to audit Fort Knox, you would find that most of the gold has been leased, and that means sold. So when people come then to claim their gold, they find that it's not there. The Bank of New York, when Germany says that they want the gold over 7 years, well, as the panic in the gold market builds, they're going to want that gold a lot sooner, and they're going to be told that we don't have the gold to give you because we sold it.
All right, I want to stop you right there, because something I want to do when we're able to budget in hiring a researcher or an archiver is when I have guests on like you, I'm going to have them sit there and put the key points you say basically into a scroll at the bottom like mainstream television, but also put it on a computer so we can search a database of when you've been on the radio/TV show. Because, Max, ad nauseum for about 2 years in almost every interview, so there's probably 20 of these, you have said that you'll know that it's about to collapse when they start demanding gold from Britain and from the U.S., and that they've leveraged it at least 10 to 1 in fractional reserve, and that it's the fraud of the silver and gold reserves that will finally bring them down, and that they want to have a controlled collapse without this happening, but that if they do go for the gold and silver this way, that's a signal that things are out of control. Now you've said that over and over and over again, and my guests do this all the time, because we have guests on that are right. They could have guests on that were right on national TV here, in mainstream news, but they don't want you to be right. They don't want the slaves to know what they know. But, Max, you're scaring me, because you've said this over and over again, that this would be the sign. And now it's not just Germany demanding the gold from the U.S. and England and places. This is really scary. So you've got the floor till we go to break in 5 minutes. Break down how you knew this was coming and what this signifies and how you think they'll satisfy it this time.
It started really back in 2008, on March 17th of 2008. Stacey Herbert and I, we were making a documentary. We were in Frankfurt, Germany. We were at the Bundesbank, and we were talking to people at the Bundesbank. And this was right when Bear Stearns was collapsing and gold shot up above $1,000 an ounce. And we ended up there at a very historic moment. And I asked, I'd like to see the gold. And the response from the Bundesbank was, well, most of it is in New York. Now, that film was later broadcast on Al Jazeera English, and it was a shock to the people in Germany. And another journalist named Lars Scholl picked up the ball, and he's been hammering journalists and bankers now every year for 4 years, until the point where Bundesbank came out and said, due to the popular pressure, we have to admit that we have these huge gold positions held in the New York Fed, and we're going to now repatriate this gold. We're taking the gold back. And then my sources tell me that the New York Fed said, well, we don't want you to start a run on the gold market, so we're going to space this out over 7 years. But this was really going back to what we discovered in 2008, which is that the gold that these banks say that they have, they don't have. And this set off a fire, a trigger. Now, over the past 4 or 5 years, what you have is central banks and governments, to keep the economies afloat, have been aggressively buying their own bonds. They call it quantitative easing. And your other guests talk about this, like Gerald Celente talks about this a lot. They buy their own bonds as a way to keep interest rates low or to keep bond prices high. Now, here's an amazing statistic. The bond price in America has not been as high as it is today in the 240 years that America has existed. The bond price, the government bond price in the UK and Britain, has not been this high since 1694, when the Bank of England was created. The bonds are where the dot-com was in 2000. It's where the stock market was in 1987. It's where the real estate market was in 2005. It's at a historic peak, at a bubble peak. Now, whether the bonds collapse between now and April, as I predicted on your show last year, it could happen. I think it could happen. I might be wrong, but I won't be wrong by much. I could be wrong by a few weeks, a few months. But that's what we're going to see. We're going to see bonds collapse. We're going to see gold now, panic buying in the gold market, taking gold a lot higher. And, of course, this all ties in to what we launched on your show 2 years ago, Crash JP Morgan Buy Silver. The price of silver was around 26. At that time, there was such a furor to buy silver. It moved up to 50, pulled back now to the low 30s. But now we're seeing the price of silver after this consolidation period. Now looks like it's going, along with gold, you're going to see new highs in silver. So silver will get over $50, $60, $70 an ounce. But those are individuals now who don't trust the banking system, not just governments. And for individuals, they reach for silver because it's a lot easier to get. It's cheaper.
And Max, the public here going to break, they're all buying survival goods, shelters, guns. They're voting with their purchases showing they don't trust the system. The elites are all buying armored redoubts and getting bodyguards. They don't trust the system. This looks like quite a mess we're going to enter.
Well, there's a good point you're making there, because it's to contrast today with the 1930s. People say this is similar to 1930s. There's a big difference between now and 1930s. In the 1930s, there was a liquidity problem. Banks needed cash to keep their business going for their deposits. But today, that's not the problem. The problem is an insolvency issue. These big too big to fail banks, they are technically insolvent. They're zombie banks. They're being kept alive with this money printing that the politicians tell us, well, we need to print the money. We don't want to repeat the mistakes of the 1930s. That's false. It's not like the 1930s. It's not a liquidity issue. It's an insolvency issue. And they're keeping the banks alive with this cheap money and 0% interest rates to keep their buddies afloat.
All right, stay there. Stay there. By the way, KVUE is reporting CNN refuses to show live coverage. Very suspicious. Mass shooting at Lone Star College in Houston. We'll be back. Insider billionaire investors like George Soros and John Paulson have recently made massive moves into gold, purchasing what Bloomberg News described as gold hoards. Soros alone doubled his holdings in a single day. Russia's Vladimir Putin has doubled down on gold, increasing the country's holdings by over 100%, with $1.8 trillion under management. The bond king, Bill Gross, the world's preeminent bond fund manager at PIMCO, has warned investors of the dangers of QE3 and inflation. And what's he betting on? You guessed it, gold. Friends, this is Alex Jones for MidasResources.com. For more than 15 years, I have exclusively used Midas Resources for all my precious metal needs. Whether it's bullion or collectibles you're looking for, Midas Resources is simply the best. I own my gold as a hedge against inflation. This Federal Reserve fiat currency could go the way of the Deutschmark and the Weimar Republic anytime. In these historically dangerous times, it makes sense to physically hold gold and silver. Midas already has some of the best deals in the industry. But if you give them a call and mention the radio special, they will give you a list of the day's super specials. Midas brokers are standing by to answer all your questions at 800-686-2237. They also have a lot of informative free literature explaining the opportunities and risk of holding precious metals. They are ready to answer your questions at 800-686-2237. Again, that's 800-686-2237. Obviously, we have it recorded, and we'll have it on the nightly news tonight. I'll file a special report for Infowars.com for all the radio listeners. As this develops, at least 3 people shot at Lone Star College in Houston, and I walked out there during the break, and CNN's going, we're not going to show live feeds. We'll show selective clips. So now, we're not going to show live feeds. But who is KHOU. So we need to go to their website, KHOU, and KVUE has it. So we've now reached a point where CNN will not show you what's happening. Because we might see other shooters in camo getting arrested, and then we're told, oh, no, the 5-year-old saw that. We never put that on the news. Oh, go back to sleep. This isn't Operation Gladio. We're not staging something. I tell you, Max Keiser, people can debate, whether a gun culture is a good thing or a bad thing when the anti-state folks don't like guns. We know they're here to protect us from tyranny. But why is the government arming to the teeth while rushing to disarm us? Is it because they don't want us to be armed during the collapse?
I think that's a pretty fair statement. When the bond market collapses, as we've talked about, because it's a bubble, it's in a 300-year high bubble. And I look at what's happening in the markets to give me a clue what the big money is doing. And I know that J.P. Morgan, over the past couple of years, has been developing huge positions, monopoly-like positions in food, copper, industrial metals, and in precious metals. And they're doing so because they know what's coming, that hyperinflation is coming, and they want to be able to totally control that market. For example, J.P. Morgan just got involved in launching an exchange traded fund for copper. So that means, and before they did so, they bought something like 20% of the world's copper supply. So now the price of copper is going to start going up aggressively higher because it's being manipulated higher, because J.P. Morgan and the bankers on Wall Street want to have a new way to make money. It's going to be on commodities. They've made all the money they possibly can over 30 years in the bond market, because the bond market, the interest rate under Paul Volcker got 15 to 16% on the 10-year bond. It hit this huge high on the interest rate. And during the past 30 years, it's now gone down to zero. During that 30-year period, it was the biggest bull market on Wall Street in history, selling bonds and bond-related equities and stocks and options, et cetera. Now that 30-year period is over, and we're going to enter into a period of commodity price appreciation. J.P. Morgan already knows it. Goldman Sachs already knows it. And they're buying huge positions into these markets. And as far as what's in the U.S., if the price of food gets to a certain level, it causes riots. We know historically that when the price of food gets to around 40% of an individual's income, you look for a riot. That's the point it got to in Egypt before the Egyptians staged a riot, a revolution in their country.
And they don't want us armed so that we can't protect ourselves, but that might actually cause total rioting where even the government gets taken down. But the tyrant's instinct is to disarm us so much they still don't care. But historically, if they take the general public's guns, that will make the government even more unstable.
Right. So in the U.S., the average American spends something in the order of 12 to 15% of their income on food. And it's still, it's not at 40%. But as prices now begin to go up because of the manipulation coming and the collapse of the bond market and the loss of purchasing power from the dollar, you're going to get to the point where the food costs are going to be out of reach for a very, very large percentage of the population.
And so stay there. We got to go to break. I got to say this, Max, as bad as things are right now, the good news is I see panic and fear in the establishment's eyes. They're power grabbing right now, and they're so insulated. I don't think this is going to go well for them. Let me tell you, I'm not bragging about this. I don't tell this story like I'm a big shot. It's actually pretty creepy and freaks me out and gives me anxiety. I went to Big Bend National Park on the Texas-Mexico border this weekend, and there were people from France there. There were people from New York there, California. In some cases, 80% of people, if I stopped or something, just to sit there and take photos, if I was in a congregated area, would say, Alex Jones, and it wasn't from really Piers Morgan. I'd say, how do you know about me? Oh, I've been listening for years. Listen, when upwards of half or more of people know who I am and say they agree, no matter where I go now, Max, I can go to the hike and bike trail, and in some cases, everyone that comes by as a listener. I'm not bragging and saying I'm a big shot. It's scary, Max, because I don't want to die. They might come after me. I don't know how. Our numbers don't show we're this big. Yeah, 15 million a week. The 15 million a week is not enough to have people from France knowing who you are. And then the next table knows who you are. And then the waitress knows who you are. And then somebody else comes over. I mean, what's going on with that, Max?
Well, I've told you, when I've traveled in the Mideast and around Europe and Asia, and people know me from the TV show, and almost invariably that people say, and I watch Alex Jones, and it's just the power of the internet. People watch your videos, and the message resonates all over the world.
And you're getting recognized all over now. I mean, the establishment better be concerned.
Well, I think your message resonates outside of America more than it does inside of America, because people outside of America have already been dealing with outright tyranny for decades, for generations, and they know exactly what you're talking about. It's only inside America that your message falls on deaf ears in some cases, because America has been very quiet for decades now. Post-World War II, it's been a Shangri-La. It's been a happy town because we've benefited from winning that war, and we've had a 60-year run. But that's coming to an end because a lot of the trends that shaped the good times are finishing, and we're entering a new period. So it's funny that in your own country, you're not as well appreciated, I think, as you are outside of your own country. I can anecdotally tell you that from traveling to these countries and hearing people talk about you extremely with great fondness. more so than I hear people from the U.S.
Well, just to be clear, I didn't even bring this up to say, hey, I'm really big, folks. It's actually creepy. Because what I'm saying is that the word is getting out. Let me show people some of these headlines. Wrangle. Some of the southern areas have cultures we have to overcome. And CNS News even has video of him saying this on the news. I mean, like if you live in the South, you're just bad. If you're a gun over, you're a Nazi, period. Lawmakers introduce bills to ban high-capacity gun clips. Texas sheriffs, I will not enforce law I consider unconstitutional. Same thing with Missouri sheriffs. My point is look at this. Sarkozy to move to London to avoid France's high taxes. I mean, how far can these bureaucrats go till everything collapses?
This week in Switzerland, of course, it's Davos. And Davos is really the primo of all the New World Order get-togethers. I think it might even be more influential than the Bilderberg meetings, because here you have in the highest mountain in Switzerland, really the cream of the cream coming together and cutting deals and doing deals. And so it's happening this week. And this is where now we'll find out in a couple of weeks what they decided to do in Davos. And we'll find out what companies got bought and who's going to go after whom, and a lot of news will come out of it. But I think Davos really in Europe is the #1 event of the year for these guys, these tyrants like Tim Geithner, who just came out the news that in 2008, 2007, he was selling information to Wall Street about which way the Fed and the Treasury were going to move interest rates. He was alerting the banks through private conversations, essentially selling information, because he'll go to Davos and he'll get paid a lot of money from the folks. That's where the bag men
They use speeches as a way to get paid off. I remember you on the show.
They show up with bags of money. The Geithner, and they're right there with their bank accounts. He's already got caught cooking the books for his own tax returns a few years ago. So they just go to Davos. That's where they hand him the bag full of money. He can stick it in one of the private banks there, and it's there now for the rest of his life. Davos is where Tim Geithner gets the $20 or $30 million, just hand it to him in precious metals or diamonds or cash, and he stores it away. That's what they do in Davos. That's what it's there for. That's where the New World Order gets paid. Today is payday for the New World Order in Davos, Switzerland. They worked all year. They got their bonuses. They get them today in Davos, this week in Davos. Buffett gets his big satchel of cash. Geithner gets his satchel of cash. Everyone gets paid this week in Davos. So let the parties flow.
I want to shift gears. Again, ladies and gentlemen, we're obviously going to go into overdrive. We're showing pictures here, a live feed from a helicopter that CNN says you're not allowed to see. So we've entered a new Orwellian level here where CNN and other cable news channels are saying they're not going to show live feeds. We have the KHOU feed, so you can see it. They must have huge servers, as this is being watched all over the country. We have the KHOU feed posted at Infowars.com. And PrisonPlanet.com right now. But CIA operative takes responsibility for Algerian gas plant attack. In the video, Mokhtar said to be the mastermind behind the terrorist attack by the Islamist Al-Mujahideen brigade in the gas complex in Algeria, takes credit for the operation. Now, let me show on the document cam viewers this. Radio listeners can go to Infowars.com. This is confirming what the London Independent was saying. Terror in northern Africa are Westerners pulling the strings. And it has the Prime Minister, Sayal, telling reporters that it's an English accent groups leading the Al-Qaeda forces. Well, we know Al-Qaeda works for the West. They've given them Libya and Syria. They've now taken over Libya. They're deploying into other areas, and then using this as an excuse for NATO through AFRICON to invade and run raids into these areas. Just absolutely amazing. And U.S. begins transporting French troops and equipment into Mali with another staged event as a pretext. I mean, how unveiled does this have to get where the West publicly runs Al-Qaeda? I mean, does that not add massive credibility to everybody that pointed out that government was involved in 9/11?
Well, Tony Blair, give him credit for setting up the collapse of Libya, his relationship with Gaddafi. He profited handsomely from that. He's a Davos guy, Davos man, Tony Blair. He's cutting deals all over the world. And, of course, Mali is the collateral damage of Libya, because all those weapons suddenly found their way onto the street and into Algeria and into Mali. And so there's the whole, what they call the Maghreb, the North African region, is now become, controlled by those folks that are at war with the banksters, the Western interests that have been, screwing with them for a number of decades. And the response from the U.S. and Britain seems to be completely wrong-headed. They don't understand why the problem started. They don't understand why the problem continues, and they have no idea how to end the problem. So they're just going to continue to foster continuation and spread of enemies. When they send drones into Pakistan or these places and just murder people indiscriminately, they're breeding problems. And of course, they don't have the money to pay for all this, so they have to borrow more money. Who are they borrowing it from? China. China's now at war with Japan, who's allied with the U.S. So we're in World War III right now. It's being fought in the currency pits. It's a currency war, and it brings us back to the fundamental reality that countries like Germany are repatriating their gold. The Netherlands is repatriating their gold because they don't trust it anymore. They want out of Dodge. They want their gold, and they don't want to play this game anymore. And that's why gold is going to go to $10,000 an ounce, because the gold is not in these vaults. It's been sold already to pay for these stupid, ridiculous wars. How
are they going to cover it now that these countries are all demanding their gold out of the private Federal Reserve? Geithner's over there, hanging out at Davos, the public Bilderberg meeting. I mean, it's just their craziness.
They're going to cut them a check. They're going to cut them a check and say, okay, we owe you $30 billion in gold. Here's a check for $30 billion. And these countries will say, wait a minute, we want the gold. And they'll say, sorry, we don't have it. Here's the check. Sorry, it's tough luck. And that's when that's when all hell's going to break loose, because then you're going to realize that the gold has been sold. It's not there.
What will it look like, as the countries say, give us our money, they say no, that's already happening. What will that do? Will that create even more uncertainty with the IOUs? And how long can the globalists pay off the Chinese, the Germans, and others with bags of cash that is being devalued? And what happens once the dollar does lose its status? I mean, what type of bonker insanity? These dollars have been buying everybody off so far by the globalists. I guess the globalists will just move to another country and we'll get the blame for it. I think that's the answer. But we're going to find out, is Max Keiser going to be right in April or within a few months of that? Is it going to be the next level of collapse? And what will that signify? I'm Alex Jones, and this is the Infowar. A few months ago, a listener, if you're watching on TV, sent us this Obama snow globe. And when we shake it up, it was our Christmas present, it's totally and completely filthy inside, which I thought was fitting. It's clouded and looks like there's bacteria or sewage in it. So let me shake this up for everybody and show the viewers a document cam shot. There you go. So thanks for the Christmas present. It turned out even better than we thought. It came in the official packaging and everything. So probably made in China, and probably has like fetid urine in it or something. I don't know. But there you go. Going back to Max Keiser of MAX-KEISER.com. You can follow us on Twitter at RealAlexJones. And where is the best Twitter for you, Max? There's several big ones out there.
Well, just Max Keiser. So it's Twitter/Max Keiser.
Okay, you heard my long-winded question before the break. What does the next stage of collapse look like, and what will happen?
Well, I'm just reading Zero Hedge. They got a story up right now. Mervyn King, Bank of England, is talking about rebalancing to avoid a currency war, and that's a big moment, because he acknowledges that we're in a currency war. The UK pound is going to have to be revalued down sharply. That means purchasing power in the UK is going to collapse. As you know, I moved to London from Paris to observe and to report on the collapse of the UK pound and the UK economy, because it's one of the most vulnerable economies in the world, because they have so little gold after Gordon Brown sold most of it back in 2001. So this is another shoe to drop. This is another chapter in the collapse of these paper money empires. And of course, gold and silver are acting fantastically well so far this year. And it's just playing out exactly as we said it would over the past couple of years. And 2013 looks to be a continuation.
So looking into your crystal ball, things are right on schedule.
Pretty much. I see that the economy, that growth needed to pay the debt, is a quantity that will never come to pass. And I'll give you a good example of how to determine that. The amount of debt in the world, or even in the U.S. with its many, many trillions of dollars of debt, to pay that debt off, it would, of course, be a subset of the tax being collected on growth. Okay, so how much tax and how much growth would be required to pay the debt? Well, all growth in the modern economy is tied to oil. And if you were to burn 1 trillion barrels of oil, approximately the same amount of barrels of oil that have been burned so far in the last 100 years, if you were to burn another 1 trillion barrels of oil, you would not generate enough taxable income to pay off the current debt. That should give you an idea of how much debt there is. So, in other words, this debt is never going to be paid off. Jobs are never coming back. Wages will continue to crash, and the bond market collapse is coming, and gold and silver are going to go a lot higher. There's just no way around it.
Max, we're going to do a little bit of overdrive here when we come back, but all I can say is this. You look at how they've tried to destroy women, destroy the family, how MTV has pushed gangster and jackass cultures on people, how it's been sold that men are supposed to be weak and stupid or thug-like. I mean, why would the system try to degenerate society? I guess for the casino gulag model that you talked about, and it's all happening.
Well, you said a moment ago, you talked about what's the end game for the elites. I mean, look what Glenn Beck is doing. He's trying to create he's got $2 billion. He wants to create his own village, his own society down there in Texas. The Koch brothers want to buy an island in Detroit and create their own, their own society. You've got 2 or 3 examples now of these elites wanting to build their own castles, their own neo-feudal, basically.
No, they've said that's the model, and then they're going to call it libertarian.
While we fight to retain our liberty, while we fight to expose globalism, we have to realize we're talking about a very powerful combination of power.
Renowned author and expert Joel Skousen breaks down the globalist plan to shut down America and stage a new world war.
In one day, America will go from day to night. And if you haven't prepared in advance, there's not enough time to prepare in 24 hours, even if you saw it that early.
Coming to the Infowars in November is our new documentary film presentation.
Strategic relocation is a systematic way to think strategically in the future about how do I safeguard.
Joel Skousen, Strategic Relocation.
The freeways are going to be crowded, they're going to run out of gasoline, they're going to run out of food, and then they're going to start to go north and south of those freeways.
Joel Skousen is renowned as one of the world's foremost experts in strategic relocation and the securing of your home.
We talk about natural disasters, the health environment, we talk about pollution, the water quality. My personal experience about being in every one of these states.
Government is digging in for the organized, incremental collapse of society and world war.
The U.S. isn't building huge underground bases and bunkers because of some terrorist threat. They know that a massive nuclear attack is coming. They want that attack to come. Most people won't even be ready and won't be able to get out of town when any of these nuclear weapons fall, because there'll be absolute panic.
There is no preparedness without strategy.
What I tell people is that you do have time. Prepare wisely in advance.
This Christmas, give the gift of preparedness. Strategic Relocation, the film, with Joel Skousen and Alex Jones. You see, the globalists have exempted themselves from all the laws, regulations, and rules that they've created and pushed. so that only they can operate. And so they're going to have city-states that are outside of the law and given special licensure by the power structure so the elites can live in those. They're then going to get the scared middle class to pay exorbitant prices to live within the castle walls. And we actually covered that in a bunch of recent reports we did last year, breaking that down. And again, after they collapse and suck everything together, then, like this big Bilderberg Group member has talked about the floating cities and all the rest of it, I'm going to do a special report on this. Then they exempt themselves, and you've got to go live in their system if you have any money. I mean, they figured it all out. That's why they're getting rid of nation states with a global crime syndicate above it, who then will get their own private zones where they can operate however they want. And yeah, can you imagine? It's like Zeitgeist, living in Glenn Beck's $2 billion libertarian heaven in Texas. And I knew they were looking at stuff outside Austin. I fact, that's how I knew Glenn Beck was moving to Texas before he did. And I said it could be Austin because they were looking at properties here. And I just hope he doesn't move and set up a bit. I mean, whatever. It's a free country, I guess. He can come set up his utopia here. I know I'm not going to be living in it, but see, if you're an insider, you're going to be able to get deals as a stakeholder under Agenda 21 to have lesser taxes. It's going to generate its own power, its own food, so you live in kind of like the Glenn Beck gulag. Man, I tell you, they've really thought all this out, Max Keiser.
I think you're going to see one of these, whether it's the Koch brothers or Glenn Beck. I think it's going to be another situation like the Hale Bopp Comet cult or the Jim Jones Guyana cult. They become very insular. After 10 years, people start going mad, and then there's mass suicide. I mean, that's where Glenn Beck is going. We're going to read about him in 10 years as the guy who convinced 2,000 people to drink the Kool-Aid and commit suicide chasing his idea of whatever he's mumbling on about. Because when you secede from society and you set yourself up as, in some way, living according to an ethos that is completely divorced from anything that we know and appreciate as a democratic system, let's call it, or an American system or an egalitarian system, you become prone to egomaniacal, dictator-like psychopaths like Glenn Beck, who rise up and realize that the only way that he can escape facing the reality of his own shortcomings is to convince everyone and himself to kill themselves. And that's where he's headed.
Well, I'm going to tell you where he's headed. It's headed to sell real estate plan. You know what's incredible? I was actually approached, and I think, oh my gosh, I just remembered. I was approached by a successful businessman in Dallas about a month ago, actually, for this plan. I think Beck must have, I know he was talking to Beck, and Beck, I even know where it is. Oh my gosh. See, I didn't even know about this. You started talking about it. I've been out of town for 3 days, 4 days. And I went and looked it up, and sure enough, he's announcing it. He's not saying where. I know where the idea came from. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. It's a shopping mall that's gone bankrupt outside Dallas. That's breaking news right there. At least I know Beck is looking at it. Oh my gosh, can you imagine going and living in a shut down shopping mall that has shops? That then they're going to have stuff built around it where everybody moves, which wouldn't be a bad idea if it was his own incorporated city. And I guess that's the plan. Wow, I know Glenn Beck's plan, unless I'm wrong, because I was called by another businessman who I know in the DFW area, and he was telling me he was getting together with other talk show hosts, and that he'd recently met with Glenn Beck.
Well, I understand that he's raised $2 billion for this project. So, it's a very well-funded real estate project. They're going to live a libertarian dream. And as we were saying, there's libertarianism and then there's fake libertarianism.
Hold on, we got to do one more segment. Can you do it?
Yeah, whatever, man.
Yeah, because I want to talk about this. Peter Thiel, the Bilderberg guy. Glenn Beck now says he is the leader of the libertarians, while Ron Paul supporters, he said, need to have the army used on them. So that doesn't sound too libertarian to me. Max, for those just joining us, I don't want to sit here just for the sake of it and bash Glenn Beck. And you mentioned Glenn Beck says he has $2 billion and is going to build a libertarian utopia. I know he's been looking at land outside Austin because I talked to one of the people involved. Let's leave it at that. And I was horrified by it. Then it was actually Dallas that he moved to. And then I got a call by a nice businessman I know who's a patriot And he said that, hey, you know, there's this shopping mall that's bankrupted. We can make it all guns, patriot stuff, survival stuff, and then maybe have a community around that, because the worst real estate is North Dallas, you know, in Texas. It's just plunging. That's the worst area in Texas, overall good state. And it may not be the same deal, but I know this guy's met with Glenn Beck, because he told me about that too. And I've got a sneaking suspicion that's where he got the idea, because Beck doesn't ever have his own ideas. It's always somebody else's. I'm going to make a phone call after the show today. But it's the idea of Peter Thiel, the big Bilderberg guy. Thiel. Thiel or Teal? I always get it wrong. Yep. Say it again?
Thiel.
Yeah, that mic's so bad,
Thiel.
I can't understand a word coming out of it. Hold on. Thiel, yeah. Yeah, TH, yeah. You know, that Bilderberg guy is the one, you know, pushing this. But again, they bankrupt things, then make themselves exempt from the very taxes, and then go live in these command bases. That's what the globalists have said is their model. So I guess Glenn Beck's just trying to copy that. Now, I've been ranting. Go ahead, Max Keiser.
Well, first of all, he's a carpetbagger. Who wants this Yankee down in Austin, Texas? I mean, don't you Texans have more self-respect than this? I mean, you got to run this guy out of town. Shouldn't there be, I mean, y'all got the guns, y'all got the manpower. Why are you letting this carpetbagger come down to Austin, Texas, and set up his libertarian utopian paradise, which is nothing but a scam, media scam, in your backyard? That's an insult. Alex?
I'm just speechless here. It's just things are getting so dystopic.
It's an insult. How dare he go move into the holy land of Austin, Texas? You know, it's not going to be weird anymore. Instead of saying, keep it weird, Austin, Texas, it's going to be like, welcome to Glenn Beckville, where everybody is boring media jack idiot. You know, he's really lowered the value of that town tremendously if you let this carpetbagger into town. And can't you do something? You got listeners down there. Isn't there something you can do, Alex? We need you to stop this from happening.
Well, I don't know if he's moving to Austin. I know he was looking at stuff here and pieces of land and stuff. All I know is that I found out from people that worked in and around him that indeed he did focus on everything we did, had people watching it. And when we see, he takes what we do and then spins it, and then he kind of just walks around in these weird, you know, blue jeans and a little nerd outfit, all creepy and weird. And a lot of his followers are good people, but a big contingent of them are like into the wimpiness and into the whole. And then he always sabotages libertarians at key points. So I feel like he's on my six. And it just is creepy knowing what I know about him, that he is constantly worried about what I'm up to. And I just don't know what to say about it.
You know, his whole career is based on a bad imitation of Alex Jones. I mean, before Glenn Beck came on Fox News, I mean, there was Alex Jones, and you know, you brought to the media world somebody who wore their heart on their sleeve in a very obvious way. And then Glenn Beck did this on Fox News, where he would well up and get very emotional over things. And he's basically doing an Alex Jones impression. So, but he would not cover the stories that Alex Jones covers because, of course, he doesn't want to upset Fox News and his media masters. And he's parlayed that into this new $2 billion fandango down in Austin, Texas, is what I'm hearing, where he's going to build this utopian version of what I call fake libertarianism, which means fake libertarianism means he'll say, well, I'm going to borrow $2 billion at 0% interest rate, and if this works, I'm going to keep all the profits, and if it goes bust, then everyone in Texas is going to have to absorb the losses. And you say, well, why do you get to borrow $2 billion at 0%? He'll say, oh, I'm a libertarian. That's not what libertarian is.
He supported the banker bailout.
Well, yeah, that's not libertarianism. That's not even capitalism. That's outright fascism. He's a fascist. You know, he accuses you of being a fascist, and yet he's the guy engaged in a $2 billion fascist enterprise combining the banksters with land speculators in Austin. That's fascism. He's right there in your neighborhood.
Well, he's looking at Austin. He's also looking at the North Dallas suburbs area, where it's probably...
If you were so concerned, he should check out Libya or Mali. Why doesn't Glenn Beck go there to build his libertarian paradise? That's where it's needed. You know, if he really believes in the power of capitalism and libertarianism, why doesn't he go to Mali and show the people there what Glenn Beck can do?
But let's elaborate on this. Let's elaborate on this. We've actually done news reports on this. We cover it in Endgame. People think of globalism as getting rid of countries. They actually break countries into smaller pieces to control them. They create regions like London or the Vatican that are outside of law and can do whatever they want. Israel's a similar thing. They build their own zones, and that's what they're actually saying, Peter Thiel and others, is that they're going to establish this. It's just amazing that we're actually, like you said, we're going back to feudalism.
It is going back to feudalism, and I have been saying that for a few years, neo-feudalism. But this Peter Thiel character, of course, he made his money with PayPal. And PayPal, of course, was, along with Visa and MasterCard, shutting down WikiLeaks when it became, and they also are extrajudiciously shutting people down that they don't want them to get their views, like, with copyright and other issues. They just shut them down. And that's where Peter Thiel comes from. So he made his bones engaging with the banksters directly through PayPal. That's where he comes from. So now he's going to take that experience, and he's with the Bilderberg Group now. And he's with these folks, and they're meeting, and they're doing their deals where they're going to try to create these little cul-de-sacs, these little Disney-esque fantasy worlds where they're going to be surrounded by an army. You've got media ideologues, like Glenn Beck at the center, and within 5 or 6 years, all the children are going to look like Glenn Beck, but they'll all be inbreeding, so some will have 3 arms. And 2.
All right, that's enough. I don't want to get into a Beck bashing fest. It's just that, it's just incredible. And he is out to get me. And you notice I'm not out to get Rush Limbaugh. I'm not out to get Michael Savage. I don't talk about, what's the other one's name? I don't listen to it. What's his name? The guy on Fox News, Sean Hannity.
Yeah, Bill O'Reilly?
Yeah.
Hannity, yeah.
The point is they're not after me. So I'm not talking about him. It's Glenn Beck is always, look how he moved up the road from me. I mean, it's like.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, I need to get this guy out of my life. He's super creepy.
Well, he's a stalker. He's stalking you. So, I mean, you got to deal with it. In some way, there's got to be enough people in Austin that support Alex Jones to do whatever needs to be done to keep Glenn Beck out. I mean,
stop it. He'll take that as a serious thing. No, if he wants to buy property and do something and become a libertarian, that's great. In fact, I want to think that he's becoming a better guy. The problem is he's still, really making stuff up about us. I mean, I'm not a fascist, folks. I'm a wild liberal in the Thomas Jefferson vein. None of these names mean anything. I'm called a right-winger today because I oppose Obama. I am a true constitutionalist. Max, I'd like to believe you're the same thing. I mean, a classical liberal, right?
I'm actually a closet Texan.
Well, you lived in France, you lived in New York, you lived everywhere, and now you've moved to London to cover that. Maybe when it all collapses, you and I will both move into Glenn Beck's neighborhood. He won't be able to stop us. We'll buy a cult compound right next door to him. He can't say no, he's a libertarian. Maybe we start.
Alamo. Remember the Alamo.
Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.